Time for another look at the papers now, joined by journalist Benjamin Butterworth and Emma Wolfe, who's an author and broadcaster. There you are. You can see them here with me in Millbank. Good to have you both back. Let's start with the Mail, Emma, and this lead story on Angela Rayner.
Yeah, big splash on the deputy leader of the Labour Party. They've discovered that in 2007 she bought her council house in Stockport in Greater Manchester for a certain sum, but with a 25% discount under the Right to Buy scheme, the council home scheme, the very Thatcherite policy. And she sold it 8 years later in 2015 and made a 48 grand profit. The Mail are calling this staggering hypocrisy. Some Conservative MPs are calling it, unbelievable, this hypocrite woman. She has indicated that they're saying that she wants to pull up the ladder, basically, that, a scheme that helped her very much back in the day. She doesn't want to support it anymore, that she thinks that, council homes should not be sold, people shouldn't be able to stay in them. It's a policy that she's questioned. She's talked about, obviously I think she said we wouldn't want to give loads and loads of discount to people. I think it's relevant. I think that, she did benefit from the scheme nearly 20 years ago, and so we do need to question the other people who need that help now.
She does say herself in comments about this that people who've paid rent on a council property for a long time should be eligible for these discounts. And she grew up in a council property. She was about 26 when she bought this, and she worked as a carer, so that she probably was on fairly low income. So I think most people will read this, and they might think Angela Rayner is a hypocrite, but I suspect they also think they would have done the exact same thing were they in her shoes. I think the truth is, as a young person, the housing market is a complete mess in this country. There is such a shortage of housing stock, such a shortage of council properties for people in need, much more acute than it was in 2007. And so I think the idea that you should still have right to buy under the same rules now, to say that it should be harder, is actually valid because the situation is different.
Emma, you alluded to it being a Thatcherite policy, the right to buy, but ever since then they never replaced the stock, did they, by building more?
Exactly. We don't have enough.
We have had a response from the Labour Party on this. They say we've committed to reviewing the unfair discounts introduced by the Conservatives in 2012, but Angela's purchase long predates that and was done by the book. While the Tories have shattered the dream of home ownership, Labour will deliver the biggest boost to affordable social and council housing for the generation, they tell us. Let's move on to a story, Benjamin, on the front page of today's Express, and this is the other side splashing the cash. Is this HS2 money they're going to spend on transport in the north? Who knows?
I think
what's the point of that?
Regular viewers might remember this one. £5 billion for the north, which I always think, as someone from Manchester, I think it's ridiculous when we talk about the north.
And why cancel the northern leg and then spend the money? Oh,
exactly. The idea is this will go on
this money.
Improvements to roads, to local rail services, and to bus services. All important things, all popular things. However, if you cast your mind back to the Tory party conference, Rishi Sunak's speech was announcing what I'm pretty certain is this same several £billion from the HS2 money, because these are the exact same projects that he referred to then. Yeah. So I think he's just highlighting money he'd already told us he'd spend. Now, as part of the gimmick to draw attention to this money actually going in, he's going to do cabinet from Yorkshire. He told the Sunday Express that as a Northern MP, I understand. Now look, Richmond, where he represents in North Yorkshire, is a beautiful part of the world, but I don't think most people in Sheffield or Barnsley will feel like Richmond is much like the parts of the north.
And it's so gimmicky to transport a load of cabinet ministers up there at huge expense. When they do the cabinet is going to be from one of the regions, they say patronisingly. This is such electioneering. It's blatant electioneering. We are gearing up, possibly for a May election now, and suddenly he's found £5 billion down the back of the sofa. Give me a break. The British public are not fools. Suddenly he cares about the children and grandchildren of the north, all of this. Well, decades of underinvestment in infrastructure across the rest of the country, not just London.
How is this pitch rolling ahead of the budget, though? Giveaway.
Without doubt.
Supposed giveaway or rehash, if you want.
Without doubt, because this is the money that we've already heard of. He's just doing some gimmicks to highlight it. Now look, it's perfectly fine to tell these areas you're going to get a bit of cash. But I was looking this up this morning, and there's a report in the Financial Times from last year that says Barnsley, another town in Yorkshire, has had its core budget cut by half since 2009. It would be double what it is if it had risen with inflation. So I think this is something where they're trying to put money in at the last minute, but actually there's been enormous cuts to local government funds over the years, which have had serious effects, especially on things like elderly care.
Emma, I want to delve into the Daily Mail next. Page 9 has this headline: Brides-to-be risk eating disorder as they slim down for the big day. The days are getting slightly longer. The clocks go forward next month. They'll be thinking about summer weddings,
Summer weddings, yeah.
But people are risking their health in trying to be wedding ready, and you've talked about eating disorders before. You've written about this kind of thing. This is a concern, isn't it?
It is a concern. Obviously, as you say, lots of summer weddings on the way. There are 80,000 weddings every year in the UK. And obviously women planning the big day, it's part of the kind of planning of the big day is, oh, you're going to look fabulous, you've got to look amazing. They are under a lot of pressure, mostly from families, mostly from social media. But actually new research has shown that these women, so healthy women, who are planning their big day, are exhibiting the same levels of anxiety and body dissatisfaction as women with eating disorders, as patients with eating disorders, which is a real concern because most people will be fine. They'll lose a bit of weight, they'll go on holiday, they'll have the honeymoon, they'll have the wedding, all of that, and they'll be fine. But some people like me, and I had anorexia for 10 years, and I've written extensively about this and spoken about it, some people that will be a trigger. They will become sick. So it's really, really worrying. Things like social media, the focus nowadays on the body and on looking perfect, even though we know that's all filtered, that it's not real.
Social media, but even more, there are cameras everywhere.
Cameras everywhere, yeah.
Is that exacerbated? Look, you can't point to any one thing, of course, when it comes to these kind of issues, these kind of disorders, but cameras being everywhere.
Cameras being everywhere, and the pressure to be perfect, the pressure not only to have the perfect body and look amazing, but also to have the perfect lifestyle, to have the perfect wedding. We know that we have these influencers who literally, the sort of fake weddings, almost just to get the perfect photos. So I think it's a real worry, and also it's a real shame. I really feel like women should be allowed to enjoy their wedding day, instead of which they make themselves miserable and possibly very ill with months of over-exercising, starving themselves, getting into these terrible binge purge cycles, really punishing diets, fasting days of fasting, just to lose weight, which, as we know, is not the key to long-term sustainable weight loss anyway.
As someone who was married many, many years ago, still married by the way, if my wife is watching, still very much married, had a wedding, it's the things that go wrong that you remember. Yeah. It's the imperfection that you need to embrace, which I think the Japanese call wabi-sabi. Let's embrace the imperfection. That's what makes life more beautiful.
And the lovely thing about this is that the fiancés, apparently the male counterparts, were really accepting and saying they didn't think their brides needed to lose weight, and that's who you're marrying. You're marrying someone who loves you as you are.
Yeah, if the husband-to-be is making comments on it, then that's a sign that maybe he's not the husband.
Yeah, it shouldn't be getting married, does it?
I mean, there's no chance of me falling into that category. There was a feature in yesterday's Times about 30-year-olds who can't get any dates at all, and I thought that was a story that I identified with far more than losing weight for the wedding day.
It's sad news. If anyone's watching, get in touch. Let's delve into the Mirror next, page 2. £1 billion in unpaid fines, Ben.
Yes, we're talking about lack of public funds. In the last 6 years, the amount of fines that have gone unpaid has doubled, which is an extraordinary rise. And courts are also handing out these fines for things like theft, vandalism, crimes that cause real issues to communities. They're handing them out far more because we're short of prison places.
That's what we've been hearing already today, yes.
Exactly, it's been a real problem. So the number of people getting fines is going up, but then the number of people not bothering to pay them. And there's a quote in this story that says, look, the reason that you give people a hefty fine for doing something is to discourage them from that behaviour. If you're not following that through to do the fine, then it's not discouraging anyone. And the threat is, if you don't pay your fine, you'll go to prison. But the reason they gave them a fine in the first place was because there wasn't a prison cell. So, I think it shows how our criminal justice system is really quite inefficient.
Really creaking at the scene of things, both with prisons, both with fines, and court cases have been backed up. Almost definitely in some cases. Let's go back to the Mail, Emma. Honey is meant to be a bit of a panacea, right? Especially if you're into the Manuka brand of things. But tell us about this Harrods honey, which is, I'm not going to say extortionate, eye-wateringly expensive.
It really is. This is Australian rare, and it's £750 a jar. It's available at Harrods.
How big's this jar?
It's, it's not a huge jar, but it does have a bespoke timber lid. It has 22 karat gold lettering. It has a glass dipper. It sounds rather wonderful. They sent their man, Tom Parker Bowles, the food critic, to taste it, and he said,
the Queen.
the son of the Queen. He said it was absolutely amazing. He said, he was quite sceptical. He went in, he said, come on, this is a ludicrous amount of money. He said, you won't want to waste this stuff on toast. It sounds amazing. And as you say, honey has really kind of microbacterial properties. It has healing properties. It's good for lots of things as well as just eating. But it does sound pretty wonderful.
I mean, for 750 quid, I
Amber
wanted to make
nectar.
me, live forever and just look like Brad Pitt or something. I mean, that's what you.
My 3-year-old is not getting that on his toast.
No,
not at that price.
No. I'd love to try it.
And you can put honey with so many things. You can put it with creamy brie, with fig, with cheddar, with green apple, not just on toast.
Sure, but if you're spending 750 quid on a jar, do you just get any old apple, or do you get the best apple you can bet? These are things we have to think about.
Absolutely.
Emma, Ben, thank you both very much indeed. We're back with all the day's top stories after this short break.